Okay, let's try this and see if it's any better. For the person who typed in that they couldn't hear, if you could let me know if this is any better. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you very much. Well, you didn't miss a thing. We just did some housekeeping things, and we're getting started now. Here's our objectives, and the first thing we're going to do is talk about clinical nurse specialists in general. This is one of the first, one of the most frequent questions that I get is, am I eligible? And the confusion over the role. And I wish it was different. It's getting better, but it's still not where we would like it to be. A clinical nurse specialist is one of 4 advanced practice registered nurse roles, along with nurse practitioners, certified registered nurse anesthetists, and clinical nurse midwives. We have our own curriculum. It's taught in either a graduate or doctoral program. And when we finish, we have completed the 3 Ps: advanced pharmacology, physical assessment, and pathophysiology. We've taken courses that are specific to the role that we have chosen, and we have a 500-hour clinical practicum. Clinical nurse specialists, just like our other advanced practice nurse colleagues, are able to prescribe treatments. We're able to prescribe medications if our states allow it, and we serve in a variety of roles. The National Association of Clinical Nurse Specialists has a set of core competencies which we used for designing both our exam and now our portfolio, and this is what both our job analysis committee and the core competency said a clinical nurse specialist will be involved in. Certainly a clinical expert, providing patient care, work as a consultant, as an educator. Probably the system organization management is our biggest role that sets us apart from our other advanced practice colleagues. And then clinical inquiry. Probably one of our key roles is translating evidence into practice at the bedside. So these are things that you will see then being called out in the portfolio, and that's one of the things we really try to do is develop our portfolio based on this evidence. The consensus model was written and published in 2008, and their goal was to have everybody on board with the same education, states recognizing advanced practice nurses in the same way by 2015. And you know what? That hasn't happened. If you go on the either the AACN website or the National Council of State Boards of Nursing website, you will see maps that show which states recognize clinical nurse specialists as advanced practice nurses, which ones allow prescriptive authority, which ones allow independent practice, and which ones require a collaborative practice with a physician. It's still all over the board. It's better than it was, but we're still not quite there yet. So depending on where you live, your practice may look very different. Here in Colorado, I have a license that designates that I am a clinical nurse spec. I am able to prescribe. I am able to have an independent practice if that is something that I would choose to do. But other states, it's very different. Our challenge when we developed a certification was to acknowledge these differences. And 10 years from now, I won't have these same challenges. But for right now, I have to many times go through people's transcripts and their licensures through their state to be able to determine their status as a clinical nurse specialist. I love this diagram. If you look at the bottom circle, a clinical nurse spec, that's what we're talking about, advanced practice role. When you go to school, you will choose one of these 6 yellow circles: family, individual, across the lifespan, adult gero, women's health, gender specific, neonatal, peds, or psych mental health. My CNS-CPs right now most of them are adult gero or family individual across the lifespan. I think I have one peds CNS. But anyway, those are the 6 population foci. If you look up to that orange circle at the top, these are specialties, and this is where peri-op would live. They don't call us out, but this is where, if they did, this is where we would be. Our clinical nurse specialist certification is not going to add any yellow circles. We're not going to be adding a population. What we will do is look at this as a specialty certification. The states do not regulate this. They leave it up to us as individual providers of the certification to decide, along with our accrediting providers, what this certification will look like. When we look at certification, we're looking at a formal recognition of specialized knowledge, skills, and experience. We're matching that with standards that are determined by a lot of different organizations, by experts in the field, and by people who already hold the credential. CNS-CP certification validates the achievements of a CNS who has sought to seek proficiency in the perioperative setting as an advanced practice nurse. So those are our definitions. For those of you who are CNORs, I'm preaching to the choir here. There is no doubt that being certified is one of your tickets to an enhanced career. I have people who hold the CNS-CP who say, I would not have this job if I didn't have this credential. So it already has some value in the community. It's one way to show that we are serious about lifelong learning and enhancing our professional growth by continuing our competency and validating that. Certainly, as clinical nurse specs, we are looking at supporting the theoretical constructs that makes nursing a profession, and it's valued by our employers. Some places are really good about utilizing clinical nurse specialists to the full extent of their training and education. Probably our military partners, the VA and the active duty folks, get what a CNS can provide for patient care in the perioperative setting. Okay, what the CNS-CP certification will and will not do. Okay, we already said that it's going to validate your unique skill set. It aligns CCI with other specialty nursing organizations that offer an advanced practice certification. We are not the only ones that thought of this. There are other organizations, our wound ostomy continence partners, PEDS, I'm trying to think who else. Oncology has one for advanced practice nurses. So this is becoming more of a norm. And then we certainly looked at incorporating components of the consensus model that I just showed you, the core competencies, and our job description. So we really looked at what does a CNS look like who's practicing in the perioperative setting, and then use that for our certification method. What the certification will not do, it's not going to take the place of initial licensure and certification as a CNS. This certification is not going to make you a CNS, and it is not going to provide primary certification. Many states now are requiring that primary certification, and one of those 6 population foci that we just got through talking about, I have not talked to a state yet who recognizes this specialty certification and on the same level as they do primary certification. I believe that will change, but for right now, please, 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 don't let your primary certification go, because you probably would not be able to practice in your state. This also does not obviate you from completing a CNS program, either at the master's or doctoral level, and it doesn't add an additional population focus. We talked about that already. No new circles to the consensus model. Okay, when we looked at what a clinical nurse specialist looks like in the perioperative setting, we came up with these 6 subject areas, and we also determined the percentage of practice that a typical CNS would do in each of these roles. So clinical expert in the delivery of advanced practice perioperative care. A lot of people think that this requires direct hands-on care. As clinical nurse specialists, we may not be doing that. We may be managing a patient population, and that's okay. Consulting is a huge component, either intra or inter multidisciplinary. Education can be either with our fellow nurses, other healthcare providers, the community, patients, families. Clinical inquiry, we talked about our role in translating evidence-based practice into the bedside, so that it is we're able to actually utilize those best practices, those standards, those guidelines to improve patient care. Many times we are looking at a systems issue and figuring out how to make things better to improve our patients' outcomes. And then professional accountability is sort of a given. I think that this is true of any certification, that we feel strongly that we are providing the best patient care based on the best practices at the time. And that's our accountability, whether no matter what kind of certification we have. Okay, so let's look at eligibility criteria. We talked about what a clinical nurse specialist looks like from an education standpoint. So that's the first thing that we look at with eligibility criteria, is that you need to have graduated from a CNS program. When I look at people's transcripts, especially the older programs, it's a lot of times I'm calling the registrar's office. It's like, is this a CNS program? And they go, oh, yeah, it is. It doesn't say it on the transcript. But I look for the 3 Ps. I look for the role-specific courses, and I look for the 500-hour practicum. Our newer programs, it is very clear that all these components have been included in the program. But for my nurses on the call right now who may have graduated, I graduated in 1993. We were not required. The only requirement we had 2 semesters of advanced patho. Clinical nurse specialists did not have to do advanced pharm or physical assessment. I had to do those later. Our clinical practicum was 350 hours. And we had our role-specific courses. So if I was taking the CNS-CP portfolio right now, I would have to demonstrate that I am recognized as a CNS by my state, which I'm able to do because I'm licensed. But that just shows you there's still a huge variation and discrepancy between states and between programs. So if you're not sure whether your program would qualify you for a clinical nurse specialist role, just send me your transcript. A lot of people are confused. They hold a master's in nursing. They have, especially the clinical nurse leaders, their curriculums are very similar to the CNS programs. You might have you might be an NP. You might be have a master's in education. Those are not clinical nurse specialist programs, and that doesn't mean that you can't ultimately sit for this certification, but it means that you would have to go back and complete those courses that are specific to the CNS program. So if your program did not have the 3 Ps and the 500-hour practicum, you have to have documented evidence, either licensure and or certification, of serving in a CNS role. So those are our education requirements. Licensure, you have to have a current, not expired, not lapsed, no suspensions, no sanctions license. And it may be an RN license, you may have an APRN license, you may not, depending on how your state looks at clinical nurse specialists. Primary certification is optional, but boy, it makes it a whole lot easier for me to do my job to know that you're already certified as a CNS. This is an example of, these are my nursing licenses from the state of Colorado, and the top one is my registered nurse license, and the bottom one, you can see that I'm a clinical nurse specialist, and I am licensed as a clinical nurse specialist. At the time that I got licensed as a clinical nurse spec, you did not have to be certified in your primary role. I do not hold that certification. If I ever let my CNS license lapse, I would be going back to school to finish up those requirements that were not required in my initial program so that I could sit for the primary certification exam. So for those of you who are seasoned clinical nurse specialists, you know, to whatever license or certification you have right now, you don't let it lapse. Okay, experience. If I have anybody who is a student right now, you may apply for the portfolio as soon as you graduate. But you have to finish your project after you have graduated. So I know that a lot of people have a project that they do in school. You cannot use that project if it was completed before you graduated. If you graduated from an older program, didn't have the 3 Ps, didn't have the 500 hours, you have to have 2,400 practice hours and 2 years as a practicing CNS. So that's our experience. And then since this is a perioperative focused degree, you have to have some perioperative practice. So a minimum of 2 years and 2,400 hours as a periop nurse. Of those 2,400 hours, 1,200 must be involved with impacting the care of the patient in the intraoperative setting. You do not have to be a CNOR to be a CNS-CP, although I can't think of anybody who isn't currently not a CNOR. But you'll notice that those eligibility criteria for experience mirror the requirements for the CNOR. I'm going to stop for a minute. We've gone through a lot of information. Make sure that we don't have any questions so far. Okay, I think we're doing good. All right, here's the portfolio. Here's what everybody's on the line to hear about tonight. An exam is probably the most widely recognized means of certification, but it's not the only one. And when we looked at our population of clinical nurse specialists, our numbers are pretty small. And we figured out in the last 5 years, we were never going to get enough numbers to be able to accredit this certification. So we started looking at, well, what else can we use? We needed to find a system that was not reliant on numbers. You have to have a certain number of people answering the questions to make sure the questions are performing the way they're supposed to, and we were never going to get there. So we could look at some other methods that may be more time intensive, but guess what? We had that time because we had fewer numbers of people who were going to be applying. Portfolios for certification is still a fairly new concept in the US. Our partners in the UK, Canada, Australia already are using portfolios extensively. In Canada, in Saskatchewan, and I believe Ontario as well, you have to do a portfolio just to renew your nursing license. It has nothing to do with certification. So they've really looked at how much value a portfolio gives to people in demonstrating their competence. So they're using portfolios for relicensure. If you've gone to school recently, you may have completed a portfolio as one of your class projects. The Accreditation Board for Specialty Nursing Certifications just recently, this is in the last couple years, released accreditation standards for the portfolio method of certification. And that's one of CCI's goals, is to get this certification accredited. That will certainly give you more value to hold an accredited certification. And just like you're certified, it shows us as a certification body that we're serious about maintaining our standards as well. And we talked about that some nursing specialties are already using portfolios for certain research. When you take an exam for certification, that's really the only thing you can use it for. But if you complete a portfolio, you can use it for a lot of different things, which makes it really valuable. It's a great platform for building a plan for lifelong learning. Some places are using portfolios for performance evals, for clinical ladders, using it for part of their magnet journey. Joint Commission loves to look at portfolios because they're such a great way to demonstrate continued competency. So what makes up a portfolio? Now, different things are in different types of portfolios. For my committees, when we were developing and designing the portfolio, we really wanted to look at what we wanted this portfolio to do. And when we looked at the essence of a clinical nurse specialist, our essence is organization and systems work and our work with projects. So we made the portfolio a project-based process. So we're requiring a resume, which is pretty standard for most portfolios. And I'm really asking people to just to hone in on their CNS practice. We don't need to look at when you were, a lifeguard in high school or a certified nurse's aide when you were going to college. We don't need all that information. We would like it to be focused on your clinical nurse specialist practice. And then the project. And this looks very similar if you're doing any kind of a project management or planning right now. The needs assessment, the change process, the barriers, strengths, weaknesses that your facility is going to bring towards the project design, desired goals, all these kinds of things. So the project is based on, or the portfolio is based on a project management type of setting with the ultimate goal that you are influencing patient outcomes. The two things that are different about this portfolio, even more different than just a place to dump your license and a couple of forms, is that we have a reflective component that asks you to look back on your project. What went well? What would you do differently? What would you do differently next time? Reflective learning is becoming more popular as a way to demonstrate learning. And then the self-awareness tool isn't really part of the portfolio, but it's used to drive your recertification plan. So that's what your CNS-CP portfolio is going to look like. Each of those components involves some kind of a worksheet and or associated evidence. The worksheets help drive, focus, delineate your project, help you keep on track, provide crucial evidence of your participation on the project. So these are all examples. These are all separate forms that you would be filling out as you complete your portfolio. And there may be some evidence to go along with the worksheet. Publications, policies and procedures, minutes, audit results, a tool that you designed, your plan, do, study, act process to make sure that your project was actually going to make a difference. So all those kinds of things are things that you will include in your portfolio. So by the end, people will have a really good handle on, first of all, why was this project needed? What you did it make a difference? So how is your portfolio evaluated? Part of it is by you. You're evaluating it through your reflective form, which evaluates the project, and then your self-awareness tool, where you identify some areas that, wow, I wish I had known how to do an Excel spreadsheet before I started this. So that's going to be part of my plan for my research cycle, is to incorporate these deficits that I identified, and then that rolls into your research plan. I felt very strongly that this should be an integral part of your clinical practice. It shouldn't be extra or different. And then it should be used then to design your recertification plan, and not merely be, do X number of contact hours or X activities. You're driving the bus, you're advanced practice nurses, you're adult learners, you know what you need to do. Design your next research plan. So I'm really excited. My first group is recertifying right now, and I'm really excited. They're stepping up and doing some good things to enhance their continued learning. The other part of the evaluation of your portfolio is you have 3 peer reviewers. You have 3 CNS-CPs who are going to look at your portfolio. They're going to give you feedback. Both of you will have the same rubric that you're working through. And at the end, they're going to make the determination this portfolio meets the standard for certification for a clinical nurse specialist in the perioperative setting. Or, you know what, I just need a little bit more information in this one area. So the peer reviewers are giving you feedback. And I think as clinical nurse specs, certainly in the perioperative setting, you may be the only one in your hospital system. You may be the only clinical nurse specialist in your hospital system. And it's really tough to get feedback from a peer. It's hard to know, you know, I think I'm doing a good job, but I don't have anybody who's on my same level who's able to evaluate that. So I think this is one of the strengths of a peer-reviewed portfolio is you get great feedback. We all learn from each other, and I'm excited about this part of the portfolio process. So I think that this is what sets us apart. We're using evidence to substantiate the quality of our work. We have a reflective learning component. We're learning from our practice. Our self-awareness tool is then driving our next research cycle and maintains linkage with our job analysis subject areas. So that's, we'll talk about research more in just a minute, but those are the things that really set us apart in terms of a portfolio that really does a great job of validating your current practice and your contributions towards patient care in the perioperative setting. So let me see if anybody's got any more questions right now. I think we've gotten past the audio issues. Yes. Okay. Let me look in the... And I don't see anything more in the chat. Okay, great. Okay, so how do you get started? How do you get started? And this is sort of like eating an elephant. You just kind of go one step at a time. You have to fill out a pre-approval application. And this is on our CCI website. We actually have a CNS-CP tab on our homepage. So you'd click on that and you'd click on the pre-approval form for the portfolio. And it's going to ask you to submit some information, okay? Before you ever even get started on your portfolio. I want to make sure that you're not going to complete a project and then I find out that you're a nurse practitioner or a CNOR with 30 years of experience or a clinical nurse leader and you're not really a clinical nurse specialist and we can't certify you because of that. So this is the thing that we do is make sure that you've got a resume or CV that validates that you're working as a clinical nurse specialist. I need an original transcript. It can be either official or unofficial. I don't care, but when you photocopy transcripts, a lot of times the quality gets to be so bad that I can't read them. So make sure that it's original. It can be sent directly from the school or they can send it to you and you can mail it to me. It doesn't matter, but please no photocopies, faxes, attachments to an email. Copy of your RN and your APRN license if you got them, and a copy of your primary certification if it's held, and mail these documents to us here at CCI. There's the address, and all this information is on our website as well. And what I'm going to do once, and you'll notice that there's no money involved in this initial process. So you don't have to worry about application fees for right now. I just want to make sure, yes, you're a clinical nurse specialist and you're interested in this kind of certification. Now you may be audited. If we are going to accredit this credential, that's one of the things that our accrediting bodies say, is that we have to audit a certain number of people. So if you get audited, it's actually you're helping us get accredited. If you would please look at it that way and not as, oh no, I have to do extra work. There's actually not a whole lot of extra work to do, because I'm asking for a lot of the documentation that we would require anyway. The only thing that we would be looking at is verification of your employment. So that's, we'd be sending a letter to your boss. But please don't think that you're not going to be able to complete this process. It's just one of the things that we have to do to get accredited. Okay, once your pre-approval form, I've received that, I've received your documents. Now it starts getting fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assign you a Dropbox. So you're going to have to be able to access a Dropbox. So you'll be asked to set up an account, and it's free. And you'll get a link that puts you into your own personal private Dropbox. And in this Dropbox, there's 3 different folders. There's one with instructions and checklists. There's one with all the worksheets that we talked about that you fill out, and these are all fillable PDFs. And then there's the applications. So what you're going to do is you're going to read through your instructions, think about, there's a welcome letter that really asks you to identify a project that's going to really showcase your abilities as a CNS. This is your time to brag a little bit. You're doing a great job. You want other people to know about it. So think about a project that really has allowed you to shine in those 6 subject areas that we talked about, okay? So think about that. You may not have an idea right now. You may have to think about it a little bit. There's no moratorium on this. I can set up your Dropbox, and if it takes you 5 years to do your portfolio, that's okay. The only time stipulation is that the project has to be completed within 2 years of your application. Okay, so that's the only time constraint that I have for you. So when you've completed your portfolio, what you're going to do is you're going to go into your little application folder in your Dropbox, and you're going to fill out the peer reviewer application and send it to us with $125. Now, this $125 is non-refundable. What this does is it sets up your account with 3 peer reviewers, and they're actually going to access your account. They're going to go through all your documents. They're going to fill out their rubrics. They have 30 days to do that. So as you can tell, this may take you 6 months from the time you start your project till the time the peer reviewers get feedback back to you. This is not a quick process, but it's very thorough, and it's a great way to get feedback about how you're doing as a clinical nurse spec. So anyway, they've got 30 days to review the contents of the portfolio. They're going to return feedback. They will not be corresponding directly with you. They correspond with me, and then I correspond with you. If they have a question, and many times it's just a clarification type of thing. Maybe you use an abbreviation they don't recognize, or a process, or they just want to have, there could be a little bit more detail to really clarify whatever part of this, part of the portfolio they're questioning. You have 30 days to get that information back into your Dropbox. The reviewers go back, check it out again. When we did portfolios for our CNOR, there were very few times that people were not successful after resubmitting information. So just so you know, it's not, I don't want you to think it's a slam dunk, but you've got a chance to have some back and forth dialogue with the people who are providing comments about your portfolio through me. And then once approved, you're going to go back to your Dropbox one more time, and you're going to fill out a second application. And this is actually the one that triggers your certificate and your CNS-CP certification. If you hold a CNOR, you get a $50 discount. So that is the way the portfolio is set up right now. You are my pioneers. So what does a portfolio do? Documents a commitment to practice-based lifelong learning. Your portfolio will never go away. Your Dropbox will never go away. If you want to use that to keep track of things in the future, ideally, I would like to have our AMS be able to support portfolio so that you can just continue with your recertification in the same bucket, basically. Demonstrates evidence of achievements that are relevant to professional development. It provides an opportunity to apply knowledge to practice, which is, there's not a whole lot of processes that allow us to do that. And truly, this should be a celebration. You should be so proud of what you've done and the difference that you've made in your organization's practice. If I was doing a portfolio, I'd be showing it to my boss. Might think about incorporating some of this into your staff development types of activities. I mean, you can use this for so many things. Okay, that is the portfolio. I'm going to stop for a minute and see if anybody's got questions. Because this is it's so different from your CNOR, isn't it? It's like night and day. And I'll tell you what, one of the hardest things I had to do was to get our office staff's brains around this, because they're so used to a test. And they're going, well, where's the test? And I'm going, there is no test. The portfolio is the test. So it was interesting to see their response to this. Okay, I do not see any other comments. Okay, let's talk about recertification. So just like your CNOR, your certification is good for 5 years, okay? At which time you have to apply for recertification. The recertification is a combination of contact hours and activities. And if you are using the activities method for CNOR, they actually borrowed this idea from me. So this is the flagship for contact hours and points. Right now, I believe there's 11 different types of activities, very similar to the ones that are required for CNOR, but I bumped it up a notch, because if you can do the same things to recertify your CNOR as you do for your CNS-CP, we're losing the advanced practice component of this. So there's a little bit more rigor involved. The contact hours, you need to have 10 farm contact hours, and many states require this anyway to recertify your primary certification. You can use the same ones. You don't have to have 10 different ones, but 10 farm hours. And then what you'll look at is, what you'll look at while you're doing your project is you'll look at areas where you struggled a little bit. Maybe you had trouble managing meetings, or getting people on board, or the change piece of it, or educating the staff. So you'll look at where those learning opportunities fall in these subject areas, and there's overlap. It's really up to you to decide where that lives. But let's say, for instance, that you had a difficult time educating staff. They had a hard time embracing the change. They had a hard time incorporating the changes into their practice. And you think, you know what, if I wish I could have done a better job with educating them. Looking back, it was a struggle for everybody. So you need 13 contact hours related to education. Whether you go and take a college class, if you go take a certificate program, you can go to a conference, but any place where you would get better ideas on how to educate people. And you need 13 contact hours. You put that on your log. And then you need 125 points with those other activities. And you fill out your log, you fill out your application, and you send that in. Please, please, please make sure you have got the documentation to back up anything that you're writing down on your log, because if you're audited, that's what they look at. They're going to ask you to provide the transcript or the contact hour certificate or whatever it is that you did to designate that you have met the requirements for recertification, make sure that you save those things. And it's on our website. It's not a secret. I would just keep those things, and they're there when you're ready to recertify. It's much better to have them now and not need them than scramble around and try to find things 5 years from now. Okay, if you complete your portfolio process and are certified this year, your credential is valid until December 31st of 2024. Your accrual period for your contact hours and your activities begin in January of this year. Even though you may not get your portfolio approved until, November, you can still use anything this year. You can use, if you go to AORN Surgical Conference and Expo, or anything that you do for continuing education prior to when your portfolio was approved, you can use that for that year. But it needs to have been completed by December 31st of 2023. So, and these accrual periods are no different than what the CNOR is. So this should look really, really familiar. We don't have an early bird discount. We do have a discount if you're a CNOR. So that's what this table shows, is your accrual window. We could not offer this certification without your support. So thank you for your interest. Thank you for looking at ways to showcase both your practice and advanced practice nursing participation in the perioperative setting. I am open for questions. These are some of our webinars for March and April. They're always at 5 o'clock. Sometimes they're on, the CNOR ones are always on Wednesdays. I think the CSSM ones are on Thursdays. But anyway, these are our webinars. They're always free, and we always record them. And they're available on our YouTube channel, or you can look on the webinars tab on our website and get to our link that way to the recording. Here are some references and resources. And here is my contact information. We have a special email box for CNS-CP, so you can send questions there, or you can call me, you can email me. I'm the point person. If you call our main number and talk to somebody at the front desk, it's probably easier just to say, get me to Julie's line, because this is a new credential, and you probably will be asking questions that they won't be able to answer. So they're great at getting you to the right people. Okay, questions. I'll stay on for a minute. I know this is a lot of information, and it's so different. It's just so different than anything we've done before, and it may be different than anything you've done before. But that's it's exciting, and I think it's a great step in the right direction. I think we will see more and more of this type of verification of excellence in practice using something like this. Okay, well, thank you all of you. This won't be available for a couple of days probably, but please, you've got the slides now. You can go back and listen again if you need to. Please call me if you've got questions. You can fill out the pre-approval form, send me documents. There's no obligation, there's no fee involved. If you decide this really isn't something that you want to do, it's okay. we try to make this so that you could change your mind without having to have money refunded. But I hope it's something that you consider. If you're going to the NACNS conference in Orlando in a couple weeks, I'll be there. I'll have a booth at CCI. I would love for you to stop by and say hi. Hope you have a great evening. Thank you again for your time and attention. And hopefully I'll see some pre-approval forms coming through. Have a great night.